Welcome everyone to the Maxon booth here at SIGGRAPH 2023. Woo! We can make some noise and get excited. That's fine. That's fine. There it is. All right. Hello, interwebs. Hello. We missed you. I know you're on break. So we are back with another amazing presenter, longtime presenter. I think it was
pre-COVID.
Yes, pre-COVID era.
I was young.
You were young. Still young. All right. So, long-time presenter with us, amazing artist, very inspirational, educational, and beautiful work. You're in for a treat. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone, Blake Kathryn.
Hi. Thank you. Way too nice of an intro. Now I get to disappoint y'all. All right. So, let's go into this. Hi. Again, I am Blake. Key and Peele watchers, Balake is fine. We will move on from that joke immediately. If you want to find me or check out my stuff or see if you even want to listen to my talk, you can find me at Blake Kathryn. And the whole thing of why am I here today is, for lack of better and more articulate words, I art. So I straight up make pretty pixels. We are at a techie talk. This is going to be a very approachable talk because what I am known to have a more maximal style, but I use extremely basic building blocks to create that maximal style, and it's very much approachable. So for lack of my limited vocabulary, let me just play y'all reels, and we can move on. So that is art. Boom! We did it. We're done. Okay, so what I do again is I have really simple workflows, and I want to show how you can have simple workflows and build complexity from that and kind of game the system, work smart, not harder. And that is deeply named cinematic aesthetics, because every title needs a talk. So let's go with that. So what does that mean? Because we do not know. I am using all these loose terms and saying pixels are pretty. Today we are going to do a guide to creating a balanced imaginative composition. We are going to go from mood to sketch to the actual final product in what I rendered at the settings. And we're, again, using just these principles that are adaptable to any workflow and are very chill. We'll be using Cinema, Redshift, and if the internet is kind, Photoshop at the end, and that also is if the timing is time. All right, so for part one, we're going to do composition and camera. This will be once we are officially in Cinema, which will be quite shortly. And that is really just making sure that you are working in a way where you're not in a spot where your camera's not figured out, you're over or under designing your client project deadlines in 4 hours, and now you're screwed because your camera millimeter changed. Then we're going to go on to the actual aesthetics part, and that is going to be materials and lighting. I am exposing this. You can absolutely rip me off after we do materials and lighting. I'm showing you exactly what I use in the scene, how it's done, and again, how approachable it can be, and how easy it is to then break it because we have a clean starting. And then we're going to end with post-render and ideally some paint over, and that is, again, just doing those final touches. They really get the camera to look beautiful. We'll explore a little bit of bokeh effects. We'll look at a little bit of Redshift's post settings, which are really achievable in minimal effort. And then, again, hopefully a little Photoshop. So, with that being said, let's actually, oh wait, I'm still not done. So with that being said, where do we get started before Cinema? And this is how I work for both commercial projects as well as personal work. I treat the workflows the same. I love what I do. I'm a pro, start to finish, minus, again, my beautiful use of the English language. So where we get started for me is a mood board. It's really chill. The best feedback I've gotten was from an awesome photographer who I have forgotten the name of, and I apologize, who said the best mood boards that you can make are when you are grabbing a bunch of stuff in mixed mediums and different aesthetics and different, it could even be a pair of shoelaces that have a cool spiral and helix to them. But then it's articulating what that flow is, editing it down, and figuring out your direction quickly off that. So this is how my flow is for this one, where I have kind of it color-coded to make it easy, but I'm really into this idea of circular shapes. You can see that in the bottom left with all the eyeballs. You can see a bunch of portals in there. And I'm like, we're going to do something with some really rounded organic geometry, and it's going to be also kind of simple. Like a lot of these designs, the nuance is kind of in that yellow outline area where I'm like, well, I really like these nouveau hard forms, and I think that that could contrast the softness of like this like weird soft bubbly waterfall situation going beside it. And lastly, I want to give a couple small tips because I do subject matter for both figures, compositions, and landscapes. So we'll do like a bust up figure who's somewhere hidden in the scene, and that way we can do a couple tricks on that as well. And then lastly, thinking of palette early. It's not essential in the mood board phase, but if you're sending to a client, they want to know what you're thinking, so include some rainbows. So with that, we have these sketches. This is how we started. I did this entire talk linearly, so I'm not sketching in hindsight. This is actually our reference. And I'm going to also do a close-up of the eye just so I can show a better example of some stylistic bokeh effects, because that'll use depth of field. And that can get a little tacky or a little like subtle for big compositions. So I just want to not cheat y'all and be able to give you some cool bokeh tips. So with that, we have our beautiful cinema, and I think I'm in my layout. Yeah, I'm in my layout. Okay, cool. So this is going to be our blockout scene, and as you can see, it is totally naked. A few things up front. If I click this shader, this is how my configure usually is. I use hair a lot, so I have hair, which is the Cinema Native plugin for hair, which is in Simulate. I have hair docked to the side vertically, so I can navigate super easy. And then on the newer Redshift, love their node system, and instead of double clicking and all, we have it off to the side here. We also have it docked down here so that I can easily click Shift-C when we start building materials and make that work. And then if I need to mess with some nuances in here, we can do that as well. And then, of course, I always toggle on materials because that is kind of the thing I am known for. So the first thing I do when in a blockout phase is we need to get our base lighting down. And it's going to be very simple, but I'll at least show the way that I do this. And the first thing is, because we are also in Redshift, I like to go to Edit Preferences, Material, and then you can change the shader graph. So it's going to be on auto, which I believe usually defaults to standard. I want every time I click this button to be a Redshift material, so I just change it to RS shader graph. And if you use Octane, guess what, y'all? It's right there too. And that just saves you having to, do this drop down, go to like where your plugin is, all that annoying fun stuff. So small tip. So where do we get started? It's going to be both lighting, and also I am on a single screen right now. I cannot lock up my sketch, and I think that's going to be really annoying to not go to YouTube, but to go to my sketch back and forth. Like, it's just going to get tedious. So there's two ways you can do this. One has a more utilitarian way, and one is the easy way, which we'll be doing for this talk, but I'm going to show both. I know what my sketch is at, so it's 1050 by 1350. Super easy little thing here. We're just going to rotate that up. Boop, at 90, do a texture. Where are you at? Oh wait, I'm not selected in here, am I? Why are you being a jerk? Are you freezing? Oh my God, are we already getting a glitch? This is so exciting. Let's see, RS, standard. I feel like you're freezing on me. Okay, then instead, I'm gonna go to a different tab where I have a texture. There we go. We'll get to that in a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Go here, there we go, now it's working. Maybe I docked to the wrong baby. We're gonna undock. This is where we love live talks, because you're like, wow, they're idiots just like me. And it's like, that's right, ladies and gents, I am. Okay, let's do that one more time. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's do this one more time. There we go. There we go. And I'm just not messing with that because it's being a jerk to me right now. Okay. So let me turn this off because this is going to be in a later chat where you have subsurface on. But now we are at a default gray material. Just delete that. This is going to be our sketch. And I'm going to go to diffusion, add a texture. And we are not going to go to Aaron's amazing talk. We are going to go to wherever I exist, which is SIGGRAPH 2020. Here, presentation, this, links, and there's our sketch. Yes, we'll go ahead and create an image folder for it. We'll drag and drop that on here. And now we have our sketch. And you just, again, click a camera. It's a redshift camera because we went in our preferences and we changed that. It's going to be 0 totally out, 0 out. Then just back your baby up. There we go. At the speed of a snail. There we go. Press play. And turn off reflection because that is being evil to me right now. Okay, let's undock you actually because you're just being a jerk today. You all saw my setup. Sorry, this ain't my home computer. It takes me a sec. All right, reflection. Turn that off. Shift-C text. It's being all glitch. Anyways, whatever, I don't care. But then we screenshot it and it's fine. The other way to do this is we can go into our perspective grid. And right now it's naked except for some cameras I haven't hid. And what we can do is we can click on front and then go to view configure. And this is really, really good if you're going to end up doing, what's it called? If you're going to end up doing like a top-down pattern or something like that. So view configure, again, not perspective, but in front. View configure, there we go. And now what I can do is I can click here and I can go to my sketch, and my sketch is here. So if I'm doing like a spirally pattern, or if I need to do some spline work, I usually do that in Illustrator, but if I and import it into Cinema. But if I'm like doing some kind of pattern where I need it native and I need a top view and a front view, like adding those two things through the view configure is great because then you can just, again, work through this perspective grid and be able to constantly check yourself and have your sketches just in a really easy and obtainable spot, which is great. So we're pretending that that weird texture issue didn't happen, so we have our sketch here, so now we block out. So I am going to bring out my block out scene and break down how that works. So we are in a giant block out scene, and I like to always build a little extra in our sketch, which we'll just go back to this one to reference. You can see I have about 2 tubular views here, and in here, I outlined them to fill in the spaces, but I have 3 because I don't know what my camera is yet. And again, I want to build myself in a safe spot just to be safe with that. And then for the lighting, we're going super neutral. So let me click play. Okay, so for the lighting, all I'm doing is 3 area lights. I'm not even changing them off squares right now. I'm just making sure that, again, like my sketch, I know where the fall off is, I know where the light's coming through. And for a block out light, I just go to the content browser, I go to HDRIs, this very invisible tab right now, and this will be the same rule for our materials, so I'll state it now. You want something grayscale because, in my opinion, you don't want to already be pre-designing your color. Like, yes, your mood board's there and all that, but don't put baby in a corner too soon. Like, go ahead and get like one of these like very neutral like studio lights, and that way you're not influencing the way that the scene is reacting. You're using a very neutral base, and that's just going to, again, keep you from being in a little sad corner and over designing too early. So if you saw Alex's talk this morning, she was awesome and went over some camera millimeters. I'm going to go more on a subjective talk on camera millimeters versus technical, so check hers if you want more techie breakdowns. But for interiors, because this is technically an interior, these are the ranges of millimeters I typically use. I go 18 to 200, and this includes for figures and as well as landscapes, because again, I bounce between subjects. 18, we're going to talk specifically for interiors right now. This would be cool if it was like a spaceshipy vibe. Like, you know, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. It's an expansive space. Like, I'm really feeling like that it's just got so much room to breathe, or I don't know if it's a horror movie, too much room to breathe. Now let's go to the polar opposite, which would be 200 millimeter. And you can just see, and our rotation is almost identical on these. You can just see now that it's very, very flat. This is like my fake figure block out because I want to make sure I know how the figure will be. But if this didn't have the figure in it, Sorry, the keyboard is being weird. If this didn't have the figure in it, this could be cool because then what I'm getting with such a long telephoto lens is it's going to give me like all this foliage in the back is going to be kind of scaled almost equally to the front, and it's going to have this really trippy effect where it's like how deep or not deep is this space, which can be cool, but I would honestly only use 135 upward to any number for landscapes or environments where you have an expansive, almost boundary-free zone, and then you're able to dial it back in and fit more details in because you have no bounding box. So for me, what I like to do is go between 40 and 50. Spoiler, today we'll be doing 50. 40 is very popular among a lot of cinematographers. The Meryl Streep of cinematography, Roger Deakins, really likes 40. It's a little wider than your eye. What your eye curvature matches to is actually 50. And I like it for this environment and this talk because I think it just has a nice balance to it. And then right before we're starting to get into the really long lens zone, 80 can be nice. If this didn't have a figure, I would maybe pick 80 over 50 just because I like the little bit more flatness because it's a personal subjective preference. But today we're going to do 50. So now we have our block out, and what's great is I know how much I'm designing. Like this is almost just like my sketch. I have 2 tubes here, and the block out is again all volume builder. And look, I'm using cube. They're not even outlined. This is all simple construction. The circle, quite literally the outline of the circle that I just made a little more oval shaped to get those in. And if you don't know volume builder, all it is a glorified bool that creates smoother geometry and smoother edges. And if you're not a ZBrush user, one really cool thing about volume builder, if I go to hidden line mode, is it gives you quads. So if you are really obsessed with clean topology, it's a really cool thing. And you can go high poly or low poly on that in your builder tab by doing voxel size. So if I went up to 20, you can see it's getting a little lower poly. It looks janky in these cutouts because I'm using organic shapes with hard edges. You know, we're kind of doing a mix of soft and hard surface here. So I like 10 for this because my scale is pretty standard and 10 is the default. And just to show the scale, this is the default cinema cube right here. So I'm working at a pretty, in my opinion, average space design. And I'm not fitting in any, you know, pre-measured assets or compositing in that sense. So it's more to your preference. So now that we have that, we know we aren't going to over-design like we would if we were at the 200 where we'd have our 3 layers. We know that we're like safe to just go ahead and make stuff beautiful and sexy. So I am going to show where that next step would go. So we're going to go to detail scene. And this I will break down real quick because it's going to look a little different if cinema likes me. Let's give it a sec to think it's very special thoughts. There we go. Okay. I'm too button happy. So we can start seeing it here. It should refresh in a sec since I turned it on and off too soon. The lighting has not changed. We're still just using those 3 lights. We are going to get a lot more ridiculous with that at the end. But how I'm building this is all of these splines, if you can see, and it might be easier if I go back to Goryad shading. Yeah. All of these splines are Cinema's hair, which is hidden down here because my pre-save hates me. And I have a couple of Forester assets kit bashed, which are all just through very simple cinema matrices. Let's go to side foliage. So with the matrix tab, it's basically a cloner. If you use Octane, it's Octane scatter, for lack of better words. And I just make it to an object, and then I'm able to control how my plants disperse. And in this case, because there's a lot going on and I'm using some depth of field, I'm not even using a random tag, but just like a cloner or those other assets, you can use a random tag and change rotation, make your foliage look a little different, and all that. Now what I'm doing here is I am stacking a bunch, and that is going to create a really more natural look of wild grass versus flowers. And then again, the other thing that I enjoyed doing is hair, because I think hair can be a really powerful tool for nature and not just for figure work, which is kind of where a lot of people default to, is something organic in the you have sentience field versus I am a plant field. So I just want to quickly break in how I did this top portal hair because it's really simple and it doesn't take a lot of time. So I'm going to just go to File, New. We're going to leave our scary file. Like I said, our portal is just an outline sphere, so you press C to outline it. This is about it. This ain't a science. It's not going to the other scene. I don't care. And now I am going to attempt to yet again pull up this preset. If it doesn't work, I'll just get over myself at this point. There we go. There we go. And so now I'm just going to click Add Hair, press play. And look, it's a wall. It's beautiful. This is exactly how everyone wakes up in the morning. It is not. So your default when you click on hair and go to the hairs tab is going to be 50K. We're going to go ahead and bring that down to like, even 10K is too much in my opinion. We're going to go to like 250. Or sorry, the opposite. 5,000. There we go. So now I have some nuance in this, but it's not looking like our really cool mossy vibe that we love so much. And so a couple things we're going to do here. First, I'm going to go in the hair editor, and for Octane, Redshift, all this is still my base matte. I just stack the texture I want on top of it. And I'm not going to mess with color because I know I'm going to texture over it. I am going to mess with thickness. This is your default. Boop. Look at this hard scientific technology. So depending on the scale of your scene, this 0.1 might need to become a 0.001, especially if you're doing something that is more of like an animal or a person. Because this is more of a plant vibe, I kind of just like sticking to the default. I want to see some edges at the end. And we're going to turn on two other things. Next is going to be clump. And you can start seeing like, oh, it's coming together, and it kind of looks like wig hair. I don't know. And with that, you also want, because we're going to start getting curvature, to slowly just update your segments, because that's going to affect how much your clump is. So the default is 24 here. Again, it's in the hairs tag where we change the count. But if I go up and up and up, you can see that it's dictating how much clumpage I'm getting, for more sciencey words. And then in guides, that segment count I really only mess with for this next step. And we will do one more texture change, but we're doing a stream of consciousness talk here. Boop, boop, boop. So I'm just randomly selecting. Again, I have all this docked. This is the brush select tool. This needs to be hair. If you try to do any of these, it's just going to ignore you, and you're a side character. So now you can see we're doing that. And then I'm going to click UI, which is the shortcut. It inverts your select. And I'm just going to delete some, because I still want it a little more randomized. I am again going to go to scale, and this again needs to be the brush one. It does not need to be that side one, because nothing will happen. And so now I'm starting to get to where you saw that kind of mossy grass effect, or viney effect. And so the last thing I want to do, because plants are wild, life is wild, is I want to add kink, and now we've ruined it. It's awful. This is me when I land in Florida visiting my family for the vacation. So all we're doing is dialing down these parameters. And you're slowly actually getting to where it's like, man, I've seen like this kind of viney action in a botanical garden. And maybe it is a little too hair-like because the tip is a little too drastic. But then you're just upping those parameters, you know, finding if you need to like maybe lower your root. And now I'm getting to basically what you saw in that other scene. I do the same for figures. When I do figures, the only thing I rarely use is kink, but I am almost exclusively between clump and thickness, and then I kind of ignore color and specular because it doesn't influence since I'm using Redshift or Octane. So with that being said, the last thing I want to do to be time conscious on this blockout scene is I just want to break down figure. She was a cube. Now she's not a cube. What happened, Blake? Technology and accidental nudity. My bad. So with this, this is via Daz 3D. It is a free program, or freemium, as we all know and love. And all I do is I use the plugin GOZ, spelt just like the letters, GOZ, and go back and forth between ZBrush. And I can use her in an A or a T pose, and I can do clay buildup and move in ZBrush, port it back to Daz, export. She retains her rig, and I'm able to come in, and then when I go back into hidden line, look at that clean topology, super well built. She's built symmetrically because she was in T-pose. For her hair, right now she's looking a little bald in one section, but we'll see that in the final scene. But I did eyelashes. I did the same thing I just showed y'all with this, and I don't typically do clump for eyelashes, but I will do it for her scalp hair. And then this is simply just doing loop selects for some of this stuff. So if I go to this kind of line select, I click UL for loop because I have clean topology, because that's what's allowing me to happen with both the ZBrush blockout scene, which is in our what's it called, volume mesher, and as well as because the figure base I used does clean topology. I can do this, and then I can click like Shift C, edge to spline. And edge to spline is now in my figure going to give me this beautiful spline that doesn't want to show me. Boop. This beautiful spline where I can now edit it down, and I'm like, okay, now I have a place to put my eyelashes on. If I select that, right click, click, disconnect, delete. And now I have an upper lash and a lower lash line. And it's also how I do my scalps. Though with scalps, usually what I will do is I will actually use the polygon mode, and I will select, what I want for my scalp, and then build hair in sections off of that. And then the last little fun tip while still in polygon mode is, let me click play. Boop, boop, boop. Waiting is the name of the game in this life. There we go. I really like, again, clean topology allows you to do fun things. One of those fun things, which we can show right now, let me go to my body and click my little select baby. There we go. So all I'm doing is like selecting these, and actually I'm going to be really minimal. Let's give her freckles real quick. So just randomly selecting this off my base model. I like to work non-destructively. That means in this case it is destructive because it was a permanent decision, but in this case I might change my mind on the freckles. So I'm just going to click Control, drag it up to copy that body, name it freckles. Again, UI to invert our select. UI again, and now we have our select. MT is extrude. I'm just bringing that out. And now I can just do a redshift geometry tag on it and subdivide that way. If you're using standard render, just pop on your cute little normal subdivision surface vibes. And then Octane, do the Octane tag. But that is how I basically mix organic with geometric sculpting, and it kind of creates this really nice artistic effect because you're not leaning hard sci-fi, but you're also not leaning hard biological. You're kind of in this like fun middle ground. So with that being said, we have our blockout scene. It's stunning. It is beauty. It is grace. But it is naked. It's grayscale and just like so lifeless and not magical, which I promised y'all. So let's go into how I build materials. And this should be a much nicer render situation because it's a simple scene. So we're going to go to no layer because we're not cheating today. We're going to make stuff together, at least this first part. So I have a thing that I like to do, and I like to make 5 extremely simple, look, it's working now, base mats. And that's what this is labeled here, but you'll see what they are. So the first one is going to be a metallic, so simple. The next one is also going to be a metallic. We're going to name it iridescent, and I guess we'll honor our system, and we'll name this one gold. Boop. And then I'm just control shifting because I'm sick of that plus button. It harasses me. Caustics, glass, 1. And I like to name anything with caustics. I do put that in my material name because you're going to see that caustics is kind of a diva, and it likes to make you turn on a lot of settings to work. And it is really fun when you forget one and you think you have lost your mind. So I have all these. They're all gray tubes. Nothing exciting is happening. Just put one on. Okay, and it, like I said, is a really great tube. So in our base properties, which we have right here, I am going to go with subsurface scattering first. Redshift now use is random walk. If you do not know what random walk is, which is the mode, it basically is smarter about curvature and the volume and density and shape of your figure with light. So it's kind of become like the main character of subsurface scattering, in my opinion, and especially because I don't use things realistically. So let's go ahead. Oh, and our setup again is a dome light that is a totally grayscale HDRI, so it's all evenly lit and chill because we want things to work simple and then we make complexity. A camera that has only 200 focal lengths, so I can fit all these cubes in here, and 1 single side area light at normal intensity, just a pink light because I don't use normal lighting, so I do want to have the option to see a material with sexy lighting and it not be super high maintenance. So let's go ahead and maybe add some color to this. And you can see that we are getting like some really nice light coming through here versus when we go back to like our default gray, and it does feel like it's kind of like a rubber toy or a plasticky toy. And I don't mess with a lot of settings here. A couple things to note. If your weight is at 1, which we are at, that means your diffuse is dead to the world. There is no more diffuse. That is how it goes. So if I wanted like some diffuse in here, all we're doing is going back to subsurface and just lowering the weight. And now you see I have a little bit of that plastic because it's a default material. Pinky coming back through, and it's kind of countering with the blue because they're complementary colors. But it's like bringing back that plasticky edge that we don't have if we go to like a full 1, where it gets brighter and light is coming through. So with that, the last thing you can do is mess with radius and scale. I mean, you can mess with all these too. Like for example, when you do this, it basically makes it like really ridiculous, and but you can get the same result going between weight and scale. It's really preference. So as a lazy person today, I'll probably do this, but this is basically being like, okay, from the camera, how much for the anastropy that I can totally pronounce, how much is the subsurface being affected? So it kind of can over dial and over hijack your scene, and it can be fun to play with. And then for radius, a good example is, let's bring that to white, our main color. We're gonna go here, we'll stick with pinks. Pinks are cute. And if we go up in scale, you can see it's starting to give pink hues down here. And it's like giving a really nice soft effect. So this is really cool if you kind of want a multicolored vibe. But then if we go to 0, now we're just back to our default subsurface that is white. So just playing with these settings and all that. For the scene that I actually built and used, all I'm doing is something along these lines, and I left that at 0, and I left that at 1. And actually, I do like this a little more today, so we'll bring a little brightness in. Okay, the next one. We are gonna go to caustics last, because they're dramatic. Okay, so metal, y'all, it's so easy. Base properties, metalness, 100%. Remembering to put it on your object. We have a metal, ladies and gentlemen. Technology. So with that, what I need to do, and I still have this old shader graph up, so let me see if I can. Yeah, why are you being such a jerk today? Let's see, view. Yeah, I don't know why it's doing this to me. If anyone knows, I'm desperate and need help. Okay, so anyways, that's not working. So today we are just gonna be basic and just do it through here. So in our color for metals, I'm just changing it in the actual base properties, which, you know, some people think it's reflection. Nah. So I'm just doing that there. And then I want to do some roughness that I seriously need to have this thing work for me on. Why is it not? Whatever. We're going to have some roughness and figure that out. So next we do iridescent. We are going to go into color again. Actually, I'm sorry, y'all. We're going to reset because I don't know why it's freezing on me so bad right now. This is the thrill of live demos and my bright and shining personality. All right, exits. Do. There we go. Intermission, elevator music. Yeah, you're mad at me. Okay, there we go. Let's give it a second. 3, 2, 1. Reopen, my sweet child. Or don't. There we go. Well, plus all you guys get to see what a beautiful, clean desktop the team put together. We stand, we support. There we go. All right, let's see if it'll be a nicer little treat to me now. Materials, cool. Give me back my layout. Thank you. Okay, let's see if it'll work now. Still not giving it to me. I am going crazy. Okay, well, we're just gonna have to do things a little different here. Material, RS standard, and then for base color, what I want to do here is add in a ramp, but because I cannot get to my nodes right now, it is being a total jerk. And so, you know, maybe if... What is it? Oh my God, you're a genius. Thank you. I was desperate for love and life. Okay, thank you. We got it. Okay, so now I can actually do what I promised y'all. So we're gonna go to, boop, Shift-C. We're gonna do a ramp. We're gonna add that in. And we are gonna go ahead and import that into our base color. And again, let's remember to put it on our material. We have to, again, increase the metalness on it right there. And then for our ramp, we're gonna do this really chill. We are going to click Load Preset. Just like the content library for HDRIs and some materials, this is great. I'm gonna do Scheme 3. So now we have this really bizarre, harsh gradient, because that was the preset I picked. If you right click and just simply go to interpolation of knots, you can then create nice gradients out of it. I like smooth, and this is a little complicated, but this is how I would do an iridescent. And since we didn't do it for the gold, let's now actually add in a, Shift-C, texture tab. There we go. We're gonna add this. Love me. There we go. We're going to add this to our reflection roughness. Click here, and I'm going to have some, is it in here? No, it is in here. Seamless textures. I really like a bunch that Travis Davids has picked out. Like, this is one of his. It's really fun and swirly. But I like seamless textures in general. It's really rare I don't use one. But you can just get like really nice softness, and that's where people are like, how do you get these smooth metals? It's even lighting through an HDRI usually, carefully placed area lights, and then being able to just go taste-wise into these settings and get your colors dialed in. Like, this is still very ugly, so we're gonna just get rid of a couple things. And now I am getting, honestly, we're going all the way down to 2. Because I am a minimalist, again, with these material builds. And now we have something that looks really cool. Okay, so the final one we need, was it H? Haha, weird setting. Okay, so the final one we need is to do some caustics. So we're gonna put this on as our gray material. We're gonna do Shift-C, and we're gonna do the same kind of ramp vibe. This time we are gonna use a preset, because for caustics, I want rainbows, and rainbows are fun, because why else are you emitting photons? So we will go to this rainbow that's already on a smooth interpolation, and we're gonna plug that into our transmission refraction color tab, and nothing is happening. And that's because now we have to go down to transmission and crank that bad baby up to 1. And you're like, this is a cool, ugly glass, and there's no caustics. Look at those gray shadows. Life is difficult. I know. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna delete these so we rebuild them together. So I'm gonna select these, right shift, render tags, RS object. I'm gonna go to geometry, right? No, visibility, override, and we're gonna click this. And I am still lying to you because nothing is still happening. Next, we need to have our area light, which is right here, on, and we go to details, and I do have it ticked on, but by default this will be ticked off. And so when you tick it on, also by default your photons are going to be about 100,000. I typically, I'll show why I change it in a sec, but so now the final step is we go to redshift. I already like doing brute force on both of these, so I have brute force on, but we have to go to the very elusively named caustics tab and have that enabled. And you're like, well, Blake, these two things are enabled, why is it not working? Because then they make you do a sneaky fourth trick where you click bucket rendering. And then, look at that, it's getting bright. It's so exciting. This is so pretty. And it's just because it needs to use your final render settings, basically, to be able to cast this. So I like to do 2 types of caustics, and this would be one. And again, just dialing it in, like from an artistic standpoint, that yellow ain't doing it for me. Like, it's coming off really ugly on the cube, and I think it's causing a muddiness effect on the sphere. And that is also why when I build my material libraries out, I like to do these 3 primitive shapes, because if it looks ugly on one, when I'm putting it on a complex figure, it's probably going to be hard again. So to not waste your time, we're just going to control click and drag that one again. And now I'm just going to change 2 settings, and we will snapshot this so we can go back and forth. But I just want to show you how just by adding a couple more parameters, this is where you can build off simplicity and get different results that are totally subjective. One is going back to transmission, I believe. And is it this one? And then the other one is going in here to our coat and doing coat color, which I also like to do coat color with this for metallics as well. And so now let's go back. I think it was that one. There we go. Let me see if that's it. If not, we'll cheat and we'll go to the one I had pre-built just in case. Let's snapshot that. Okay, it didn't work. Hang on. So let's go back to our base mats. And this was the one I built. Why do you keep giving me multiple? Okay, whatever. So now in here, it's actually, transmission depth and dispersion with coat weight. So now let me just show you, this ramp is a little different. So for the sake of consistency in this talk, I will reload the one we just did for full colors, and I will get rid of the yellow again. And then I am going to pop on, again, built the same. This node thing's just being weird today. Of course, it worked perfectly yesterday. Life is fun. There we go. And now you can see by me adding in the dispersion, aka dispersing, and adding in coat weight, it's creating this completely bright material with the exact same ramp, and the caustics are totally different. And for this, I'll go into my final thing, which was revisiting the caustics in my area light that is impacting it. It is off on dome light, so dome light is not doing anything here. And I can just go up in numbers like 800,000. And let's screenshot that real quick. And look at how much more refined and detailed that's now getting, because you're giving it more juice in the machine, basically, the higher you go with the photon count. I do not see a render difference personally on this, so I think you can just be greedy and it'll come down to your sampling at the end. But we went from something that feels kind of muddy and low res to something that actually has potential to be really, really nice. And again, some things to note. I like the texture on the sphere with the darker tone, and here it looks really ugly. So again, it's building your library with some objects so that you can like figure out like how to build clean things that work across some varieties, know its limits off the source, and then build complexity from that. So I keep saying complexity, let's actually make like a fun material. So we'll just stick with this iridescence because this is my preferred node thing, and I don't know why this one's my antagonist today. And we're gonna still do Shift C. We're gonna do a material blender that doesn't want to pop up. Where are you? RS material. Let's just go back here then. Material. There we go. Material blender. Pop that in. If you drag and drop it, it'll auto node because life is cute like that. And what this is going to do is if you use Photoshop and you've done like a bunch of layers before, this is all you're doing. But what's cool is now that I have, we'll use the ones we built today. Now that I have these bases, all I can do is I can click on these guys. Well, nah, screw it. We're going to use these ones that are built the same. All I can do is click on my metal. We didn't add a roughness to the gold, so I won't fake that in this. Copy paste it. Go into boop, 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 material color, and of course, respectfully add it to our object itself. And we'll turn off bucket for this just because we're not going to worry about our caustics at this point in time, and I want to make sure that we're being cute, speedy little demons. But nothing's happening, and that is because I now have to mess with my blend color. So blend color, black is off, like the lights are out, white is on, which if I do that, it's going to go full gold, as we can see in our thing right here. Let me click out a snapshot, and here. So that doesn't really work. That's not artsy. That's not blending. You could go halfway in the middle, too. Sometimes that makes sense. And now you have this kind of cool gold thing. If I was then actually to turn on the bucket, what's going to be cool is we're going to have some of it affect caustics, but some not. And it's really just taking in, like, it being 50-50. So you can see now that like it's a little less rainbow, but we're still getting that really nice like rose goldy effect there. But that's still not very artsy to me. I might use that, but it's like I don't feel like I'm giving y'all your money's worth. So we're gonna go to a texture. Are you still just not gonna work? Let's see. Yeah, you're still not gonna work. Okay, so we're gonna go here again, do texture. I am going to add another cool little fun one. We'll do this because this is really dramatic. And I am going to go up to blend color. And so now you can see like, oh, now I only have like a little bit of caustics. And like I have, it's almost like a cool sparkle effect. And that these golds are just working the way they're working. So now let's like add in one more fun one for kicks and giggles. We'll do the subsurface one. It is at, again, because these were pre-built, we'll bring that back to a 1. And we'll put that back at white. So that was what we had built earlier. It might have been like that. So I am, again, just not copying the output, just the standard. I'm going back into this material blender one we're doing. I'm copying it. And I can just feel y'all sweating, being like, Blake, all these nodes are so unorganized. We're going to fix that in a second, don't you worry. So when you don't see it pop up, drag that over to layer 2, because layer 2 is not popping up here. Material color. And again, nothing's happening. And we can do a couple things here since we're experimenting with textures. So one is, what if we made it additive? And what additive does, again, you have to take it out of grayscale a bit, is it basically operates similar to Photoshop's like screen. Like it makes everything very, very bright. And if I take it off, you can see it like brought out down some of those highlights and lowlights. So that's like a fun thing that sometimes I'll use with subsurface because I think it can be really powerful. But for now, what I want to do and not be stressed out is I want to organize my nodes so I can add a blend color and not just keep having nodes make a weird spider web. So I'm going to press Control A and Shift L, and now we have organized nodes that make my heart sing. So we're going to go back here, we're going to add a texture, and again, I like to use all different seamless ones because that's where you get this fake illusion of complexity on what is honestly, as you guys are seeing, really, really simple builds. So do this one more time. Squeeze up here. Layer 2. Let's do blend color. And actually, I made a mistake here because it is subsurface. This is far too bright of a material. We need some hard blacks and whites. So also just kind of learning the yin and yang of your materials. And now you can see like, oh, like that's really ridiculous. But maybe I go into my remap scale on this texture. And if I go lower in number, it should enlarge the texture effect. So let's do that. And now I can start kind of getting these really cool effects where I'm like, these are all artsy materials that are probably very impossible to build in real life, but it's going to give me a stylistic approach to my work. They're not basic, and it all started off of several really basic materials. So again, we'll do one final bucket render just to see how the caustics worked on that. And then we're going to go to our primary scene where quite literally I used these 5 textures and did the exact same process you see here. And that was as deep as it got. The most I maybe did was add a triplanar if I decided to not have a seamless texture. So now with caustics on, you see we're getting some of that pink back in there. The reflections are coming back and being really bright and beautiful. And it's just, again, adding these simple, very vanilla, chocolate, strawberry flavors to mix to create something that can be optically intriguing and beautiful. So let's go back and open up. Now we're going to go to our primary scene. This is identical to the block out minus I added textures so we can finish this talk on time. So we're going to let it load for a bit because it has plants and they hate me. Cool. And I'll hide our sloppy cameras because we already know we are using a 50 millimeter, which we are ticked in on. So let me click this on. We still have our exact same dome light, by the way. We haven't done lighting yet. So I'm going to press play. Thank God, bucket was already off. And we are going to let it load for a very beautiful moment that hopefully isn't forever. Again, I work kind of high poly, so that is sometimes a push and pull with these travels. So now we have this, and if we want to very quickly revisit our mood board, it kind of is in this vein, but it's lacking any visual intrigue because all we have is our 3 portal lights, you know, and we have that dome light that we had in the blockout phase, and they're all grayscale. So we're not getting the fun light play that is why I am hired, that is why what I love in making materials and doing lighting setups. So let's break down how we can actually start making that. So I'm going to tick off dome light, and this is my lighting here, and we'll start with no environment on. So if you are animating, I got this tip online from Aaron Rabinet's YouTube channel. Apologies if I butchered your last name. There is a really cool way where if I was to animate this, one of my big grievances with the dome light is it's very, very flat. So if I'm pushing in, this sky is still going to feel flat, like I'm not going to get a parallax effect. And that's totally fine, but I just want to show one other way to do it because I've totally love this guy's trick on it, and I think it's really awesome. So this is, instead of using our dome light, which was, again, if you click on the area light and you go to dome, that's all it is. I'm going to make a mesh light, and that is basically a fancy area light. So we have our area light here. It's also the default button. We're going to make that, and nothing's going to happen other than the fact that it's going to be a little blob right here that's invisible. So I'll just move that up so we know who it is. And we are going to go from our shape in the area light to mesh. and it now has an option of what is my mesh. So if you're animating and you want to have some parallax, this basically makes your sky a 3D object that's going to let you go in. Again, shout out Aaron, really appreciate this tip. I'm going to drag it into sphere, and our sphere is very tiny and it does not exist right now. So here's our sphere down here. You can see it's starting to blow out right there because I now need to make it sky sized. So I think for this scene, I went like 7,000 centimeters big. And now it's probably going to do nothing again. And that is because we also need to go into our area light and click bi-directional. And what's really cool is now it's super ugly and blown out. Like the exposure is maxed out. And that is because we need to add a texture. So I'm going to click here, go to my texture tab. You could do this with a plane as well if you have an enclosed space. So you could use like a sky like this and it be a plane. But in this case, I wanted it to be more circular. So instead I went with this, which is off ArtStation Marketplace from an artist called Yard Sale. It's Anime Skies. And then I want it to be visible. And you're going to see that I'm still lying to you because it's still really blown out. Like, oh my God, where was that image? It's just our intensity. Lower that bad boy. Make it work for it. And now we have this. And if I am to switch cameras, let me go back to camera. Here's it at 50. So we'll screenshot that for reference. And here's it at like 18. We're going to give it a beautiful second. And the sky is moving. So now we don't have the flatness or have to, if you wanted it baked in and you didn't want to do it in, whoops, post. Oh, and our big ones don't work because I would have to make the sphere bigger because remember, those long lenses are crazy. So then if I go out to my big ones, I'm now outside of the dome. So you can see how I built it that way. But yeah, so you can see that there's movement. I'm getting more of the sky over there, and here it's out here. So if you were doing like a cool like camera movement shot, that's like a nice tip. I liked the ones I built originally more because I rotated in the right way, but it was the same sky, same metric. It's just the pink side of the sky. And the only other thing I did is change the color to tinted, and that allowed more pinks to come in. So just a little bit of rotation and a little of that. And we have this. So now, what about our other lights? And we're not, yeah, there we go. Our portal lights stayed the same. All I did was make them pink. I didn't even change intensity. So that's where that pink is now coming through instead of grayscale. Our back portal lights are also the same. I did make them a disc because I'm a clean girl. But this one, I just changed pink. It's our hero one. So if I am to tick these bad boys off, and let's just look at the current one, you can see that we lost some cool reflection detailings we were getting in here and some brightness, and that's because this is just, it's a long scene. It's not hitting everything I need. Another thing I had to do was exclude it from the tube trimmings because it was making this area that already has highlights hot white, and you don't want that. It draws the eye in a way that's very distracting. So I copied that, didn't even move a thing, change anything. All I did was make my tube trimming go from include or exclude to include. So now it's at a weak intensity of 15. It's still giving it some really tertiary pink tones that are subtle, but I am not blowing out my metals because I work with a lot of tiny stuff and that's hard. The last one we did, again, the coordination didn't change at all on this, is I did an include for the stuff I still felt was too dark. So let me screenshot that and tick this on. And make sure I'm out of screenshot again. And now you can see we have a little bit more of a brightness, and it's subtle, but again, these are the small details where we're working simple to eventually build up these complex things that work really nicely. And then for the caustics, I don't want all these lights casting caustics. I think it's going to be ridiculous. I want it on the water. That's like where my artistic vibes are feeling for this piece, and I don't think it would make sense or even show up in a lot of these areas, so it's producing for nothing. So all I did was do the same thing where I have 100 intensity. I did a darker pink tone so it wouldn't give too much hot highlights here. So go darker with your color, but still enjoy that saturation. And I made sure that caustics was on and added the photons I wanted for details, which you can see here when we get to the final render. But I'm just making it to where it won't blow things out. It's controlled, and it's only including the thing I want it to include, which is nice and easy. And I did it for two side things here. They're really subtle. To be honest, if I tick these off in our final render, we won't see them. But again, just like figuring out that way. And the last thing we will break down is if we go to our figure again, and we'll do shading this time because she has a lot of kit bashed bonsai plants and stuff around her, is now she has a full head of hair. I did some IMM brushes that I also got off ArtStation Marketplace. This isn't even sponsored by ArtStation, I'm sorry. To do her torso bodice design, which you can see here. I do figure lighting because if I take off these figure lights, and again, look, they're all colored and they're all area lights. But if I take that off, boop, and now screenshot that. So you can see how much more. It actually looks like she's in the environment with all these fake lights, and especially at a distance too. Whereas here, because we're cheating realism, she's actually technically more in the shade, and so she's getting all these blue tones. And if I was to make this a series or an immersive piece or it's a concept art vibe, that is going to feel disassociated. And why would I paint it in when I can just use these very specific lights, where again I'm using include or exclude. Let me take them all back on, to be able to basically beauty light her in a way that defies gravity and also feels like it fully works in this sense. So the last thing I want to do, because our scene is basically complete, we've done texturing, we've done lighting, we've done a couple cheats here and there, we've yelled at the texture nodes. I want to show you guys some bokeh. So let's go in to, we'll do bokeh 1. I'm going to pause it because I don't want y'all to see this yet. I want to make sure we walk through it together. Display, optical, or no, object display. There we go. Okay. So something I really like to do when you first make this situation, this is a default camera, right? Yes, I've angled it. We're working 300 millimeter because I want intense depth of field here, so longer lens is better. This is an exception to me not usually going above 200. And the focal distance is random. When I create depth of field for anything, I really like to create a sphere or a cube and have that be flexible so I can like move my depth of field around, and I'm not like, oh, it's focusing on this eyeball, but I don't like it on this eyeball because it's too blurry. No, now I have a sphere that in my figure thing is the lower red dot that hides it from the render is ticked, and I can just assign my camera to that depth of field. So I'm going to drag that into there. And the default aperture is 16. That means we are in focus. So let's click play. Make sure I'm not lying. Oh, and make sure I'm out of screenshot because that's always important. Okay. Give it a second. Love me, please. I see you thinking down here. Oh, while we're waiting, if you ever get this warning sign, scene uses trace set technology, that pretty much is just the most yellow flag of yellow flags. It's just telling you, like, your render is going to work, but you're using include exclude, so you're kind of defying logic. So, like, here's a warning, it might glitch out. I've been doing this for 7 years. It's never glitched out, but it is a weird warning, and it's an actual pointless one. Okay, so we're fully in focus, right? Let's screenshot that baby. So what I want to do now is I want to lower my aperture. For this, if you've done photography, you can freestyle it. I did enough to. But so this, I'm going to go down to like maybe 0.5-ish, and nothing's happening. Why is nothing happening? Depth of field requires you to tick on bokeh. It is the law. And it will default to circular. So let's see what our default bokeh is real quick. So now we'll screenshot that. And if we look at it, we have that and focus, that. We're getting a really nice soft fall off. The eye is where I want it, which is a little left to the actual eye because I want fall off on her cheekbone. All this is just training your eye, finding out your subjective preferences. Now, something I really like, and this would be cleared originally, is Redshift allows you to do a really fun thing where you can go to image, and this is the default image. And you just click on your little image tag, you go to texture, and we can pick random shapes. You can make your own in Photoshop. I don't know. Use AI holistically to make a bokeh. Doesn't affect my life. And now, if I zoom in, I'm going to give it one more second. There we go. That's unnoisy enough. Here's our default where it's all like that. And now we're getting these cool bubbles, which I think are really fun. So that might be a little subtle. So let me go back, or here we go. That's even higher res now. So let's add in another one just to look at it. And I love doing this for close-up shots. I think it adds a beauty element that's really beautiful. It also saves you so much time in post because manually doing that stuff just never looks as good. That actually might have been too similar. Let me do a really different one. And these, again, not sponsored, ArtStation Marketplace bokehs. You Google bokeh CGI. The artist even gives you free ones to try out if you want to buy his pack, and you can get commercial licensing for it, which is awesome. So then we'll screenshot that as well. And so now you can see we have that one. We have this one. It's even changing the way the eye, kind of like these eyelashes are kind of working. Here, I'll go back to a higher res one because I'm an impatient girl. But so we have that, and then we have that. So it's even changing how the out of focus is happening, which works really, really lovely. So this is a trick I really like doing. And if we go to our 135 millimeter, I did this as well. Go out of screenshot. And you can see that right here, that's kind of like our notable bokeh. And if I go to figure and tick off these added ones I did just for this mid-ground shot, because I don't like it in the main shot that's zoomed out, I cheated where it was placed. So we're actually, it's almost looking like she's releasing these like bokeh light particles or bubbles, and it's really fun. And again, we can just see one more for kick's sake. Let's show a really weird example where you might be going too far over the edge. This is a very grainy, like noisy kind of one. And in this case, it almost looks more like I have like, if this was like film photography, I would be like, oh, like the film got scratched or something weird happened. So, you know, you push and pull, but you can have a lot of artistic play with this that works really good. Okay, so last thing we are going to do is we'll use this scene for the sake of speed. Click on these dots because we're on a small screen today and go to the gear icon. We're going to add some bloom and streak. And I already did the threshold, but all I'm doing is the threshold's going to be somewhere in the middle when you start out. And this is kind of what it looked like, is now I'm just adding in, and that means how much it's getting close to the camera and it's allowed to go. Like that's too much, that's overexposed. But I added in artistically where I just start to get a soft aura around the areas that do have highlights. If you go too close, then all your midtones are also gonna do it, and that can create a muddy effect. And then for streak, I really like building in streak. I think it's cool. Again, the threshold will be like somewhere where you don't see it, but you can get really wild. You can see now it's like too much. But I like to bring streak down depending on the scale of your scene, and then depending on how much I want it to blow out, I mess with the tail length and it lets me do that. And then if light is coming from a specific way, I'll rotate the angle, and that is just where the crisscross or however much your streak number amount is going to like have for the hero angle from. So with that, I just want to do a very quick boop, boop, boop. Full screen this bad boy. Here are some high fidelity tests that aren't pixelated for you for different bokeh images and how they created different focal areas. And then here is also why I use automatic sampling, because I don't know why, but this one comes really noisy, and I actually tried. I put in effort and I didn't care. And these little flickers are just because of our environment area that's reacting with the bokeh and lighting. So these are ones that you would have to dial in and decide what's worth fixing in post, or do I like this little like grainy effect, and things such as that. With that being said, let me see if my final render was nice and actually downloaded, because oops-a-daisy, it didn't. Yay. So this is it non-photoshopped minus this glitchy top. We're yelling at rendering today. Why are there black bars here? But so this is our final render. This is pre-Photoshop. And even though it has some glitches, I'm going to move over to Dell, and I'm actually just going to do the non-Maxon Photoshop portion over there. So if you want to chit-chat about Maxon or Adobe or about how much I glitched out for the first 15 minutes of this talk, we can have a good old time. So thank you. I hope this is helpful. I hope you make artsy, colorful shit. And that's it. Thank you. Woo! Only 2 minutes over.
There's a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff there. So, yeah, we are out of time. But the good news is, Balake is not going to run away. She's just going to run down the aisle or walk or skip. Maybe skip? We'll see. She will move down the aisle in some way towards the Dell booth, and from there you can ask additional Q&As at our demo station over with Dell. So thank you. Stay tuned. Up next is Joshua Keeney.